Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, today's Thursday, April 16th, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A tragic story out of Virginia, where former Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax shot and killed his wife before turning the gun on himself in a murder-suicide at their home. Tonight, we'll discuss how critically important domestic violence is, but also mental health, depression, the silent killer among especially black men. We have two black male psychologists joining us to explain why black men need to confront this severe mental health crisis, also highlighted by rising rates of depression and suicide. Civil rights groups are participating in a major RICO case in Kansas City against an all-white board accused of managing Westport's nightlife like a racist cartel. We'll talk with the attorney who filed the lawsuit, the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City. A jury has found that Ticketmaster and Live Nation operated an anti-competitive monopoly over large concert venues that took place in California. Morgan Harper, our economist, will explain how this verdict will impact your wallet. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. loses his composure when Alabama Congresswoman Terry Sewell reminds him just how unqualified he is for his position. And in tonight's Shop Black Star Network Marketplace segment, we'll showcase loungewear for women who desire the unmistakable feeling of luxury and style. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, an update on a story we told you in November about a significant RICO lawsuit in Kansas City. The suit involves an all-white board accused of controlling a nightlife area like a racist cartel. The lawsuit focuses on a secret good neighbor agreement, which is allegedly used to exclude black-owned businesses from the area. Currently, there are no black-owned businesses operating in this particular district in Kansas City. A coalition of prominent civil rights organizations, including the NAACP and the Urban League, has come together to file an amicus brief on behalf of the plaintiffs. Joining us now, attorney Cecilia Brown, who filed the lawsuit, and Gwen Grant, president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City. Glad to have both of you here. All right, Cecilia, so walk us through this here. What this area of town, is this an entertainment district? What is it about this area? And so tell us about that first.
Absolutely. Hello again, Roland, and hello, Gwen. So nice to see you. Yes, so the Westport District is an entertainment district, one of three in Kansas City. Happens to be most popular amongst like the younger crowds, where the other two are reserved for kind of shopping and more restaurant or concert venues. This one is mainly geared toward the younger crowd. And this is where a lot of Black people have gone to patronize and try to enjoy themselves.
Okay, so how long has this been in existence?
So Westport District has been in existence as many things, right, for a very long time. So it wasn't always this entertainment district. At one time, it was actually a place that bought and sold enslaved Black people. One of the buildings that enslaved Black peoples were bought and sold in is still standing to this day. And it's now the name of the building is Kelly's. And, you know, the recent evidence that we found shows that one of the owners actually has instructed security guards to target Black people. So the historical nature matched with what's going on now. I mean, it's 2026 and we're seeing the exact same patterns.
So when you say instructed, is that based upon emails, things along those lines that you've discovered in discovery? How did you arrive at filing this lawsuit?
Well, we arrived at filing this lawsuit based on too many Black entrepreneurs being blocked out of this space. But the discovery process, and quite frankly, media, your show, Roland, has allowed witnesses to come forward. One of those witnesses was the captain for the Westport Public Security Department. He came forward and said, yes, while he was captain, he was instructed to target Black patrons, to make Black people disperse from groups, to escalate Black incidences in hip hop venues. And he was specifically instructed not to escalate incidences that involved white people at non-hip hop venues.
And so how many Black businesses have tried to go into this area? How many have tried to open an establishment?
So I don't know over the many years how many businesses have tried, but I do know that we have 3 plaintiffs in this case. And surprisingly enough, Roland, we actually filed a 3rd amended complaint in March of this year because what we found, we've added another claim of civil conspiracy because what we found was that these business owners were reaching out to Black entrepreneurs and basically trying to get them to conspire to now take over leases in this area in order to refute the discrimination charges that we have. Thanks to witnesses, thanks to people coming forward, we have recordings, we have transcripts where literally 2 businesses are offering a $300,000 investment to a Black entrepreneur to say, hey, come get in here. This entrepreneur himself admits on tape that they were trying to refute the discrimination claim. So this RICO, this conspiracy just continues to grow. And we are so fortunate that we keep ending up with all of the evidence.
Gwen, let me bring you in here. And so you and others have filed this amicus brief. Just share with us why you decided to do so.
Well, what we found when we heard about this case was that this is just the continuation of what we consider to be the historical restrictive covenants. And the Westport area is in close proximity to the Country Club Plaza, which is where the restrictive covenants began historically here, which prohibited Blacks from doing business and living in these areas. And so when this case came forward, it was really evident that the city of Kansas City, Missouri, should also be held to account on their failure to protect the civil rights of residents of Kansas City as it relates to our entertainment districts, being the Plaza, the Westport area, the Power and Light District downtown. And we've experienced historically this racial discrimination relative to managing the crowd, changing the music, the playlist, when you get a tipping point of the number of African Americans in a social establishment, then the music shifts to maybe from hip hop or R&B to country and Western to make the environment less inviting. So Kansas City has a pattern of perpetuating racial discrimination as it relates to equitable access for African Americans in business, in the entertainment districts, across the board. So that's why we joined on and signed on to the amicus.
And listen, what you've laid out, I mean, we have seen this take place in numerous places all across the country. Restaurants, literally, I remember there was Houston's in Chicago, hugely popular among African Americans. And I remember then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. telling me point blank that the owner pretty much shut it down because the clientele was too Black. We've seen this in other bars and restaurants and the use of dress codes, to your point, music, I mean, all sorts of different things. And this is the price, this is what it means to be Black in this country.
So, there's a thing I want to add here, Roland. With the Westport area, our civil rights organizations pushed back several years ago when they started to try to set up barriers or roadblocks, entry points into Westport so that they could search people before they come in. So what we find when that happens is you have a dress code that's they use discriminatory practices when enforcing the dress codes, and we pushed back as from a civil rights perspective because of that. And then, so that's just another barrier so that we can't get in. So we challenged this at the city level. What the city did was they passed an ordinance to vacate the streets in Westport. So there's this street vacation ordinance that creates the environment for this cartel to have control, because the city has ceded its responsibility to the Westport Business District. So they control the streets. The city no longer owns the streets in Westport. Well, we own them, but we don't control them. They vacated their responsibility. So therefore, the Westport Merchants Association, the CID, they can determine who gets into Westport, what type of security measures are in place. And then when we push back from a civil rights perspective, they said, okay, we'll allow civil rights monitors. But what they did was invested in a crime prevention organization to do the monitoring and not engage the civil rights organization so that we could protect the rights of the residents who want to enter the Westport area. So it's just another form of discrimination that the city is complicit in sustaining and maintaining.
Cecilia, talk about that part because the role that government plays here.
Absolutely. To Gwen's point, Kansas City is responsible for what's going on in Westport, not just in theory, not just in any attenuated way. But what we found in discovery is that Kansas City Regulated Director Jim Reddy showed Westport CID how to circumvent its own ordinances in order to push through its Good Neighbor Agreement. This Good Neighbor Agreement precisely bargains for liquor licenses. On the voting form for liquor license, it squarely says you cannot bargain for this. Not only was the CID and different business owners turning in this consent form lying, saying that they weren't bargaining for it, but they were turning it in squarely to the person who told them how to use these Good Neighbor Agreements to get around his own ordinances. And shockingly enough, he up and resigned in February. No 2 weeks notice, no notice of anything. So we are currently naming Jim Reddy and the city of Kansas City in our third amended complaint. And we want the city to be responsible for what is allowed to happen for far too long.
Questions from my panel. Let's introduce them right now. Scott Bolden, attorney here in Washington, D.C. Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University out of D.C. Dr. Nola Haynes, Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, and host Nola Haynes Is Not a Spy podcast of D.C. Scott, you first.
Thank you all for coming on the show. I mean, if you've got that type of evidence, then you got a pretty strong case. But let me take a different view. It seems to me that on the conspiracy piece, I mean, the powers that be, or those organizations that are trying to keep Black organizations out from opening businesses in that district, if they're offering $300,000 to Black businesses to come in, whether it's to fight the lawsuit or not, isn't that positive? Isn't that kind of what you ultimately want, and maybe the beginning of a settlement or resolution discussions in regard to those who are part of your lawsuit?
Thank you for your question, Scott. You know, from where we're sitting, it's not a positive thing, because what they did was they offered $300,000 to a convicted child predator to come in and follow their rules, to continue to perpetrate the discriminative practices that they already have. Someone that they knew that they could have under their thumb because of his criminal record. And so the evidence has shown a lot. And in this way, you're not actually allowing for free trade and free business. What you're doing is you hiring a house Negro to do what you want to do and to be the mask of, we're not racist.
Right. Well, but you need racial intent in your lawsuit. For example, to the other guest on keeping Black people out of Westport, wouldn't you agree that as long as the rules are race neutral versus racially offensive, isn't that okay for the government or even an agent of the government to put those rules in place, such as no jeans, no hats, no, I don't know, jewelry, whatever would be race neutral. What's wrong with that?
The rule could be race neutral. The execution of the rule is where the problem comes into place, and that's where we step in.
Okay.
It's how the rule is applied differently to blacks than it is to whites, and that was the problem that we anticipated would occur when they vacated their responsibility under federal law to protect the civil rights of their residents. They abdicated that responsibility to the merchants, and therefore the merchants have the power to do whatever, enforce their rules however they see fit. So it's not the rule, it's the execution.
All right, I'm done being devil's advocate. I'm sorry.
Greg.
It's all good.
Greg.
Thank you. Thank you, Roland, and thank you, sisters. I'm looking at the complaint, and it reads like something out of the 1950s. This racial collusion, this all-white board saying that you hire this certain DJ to play this any song off this no play list. We're going to try to get your liquor license. Even going so far as to say if you have caterers that aren't on our approved list, we're going to try to snatch your ability to have a restaurant in your establishment. It really just seems like on its face, this is pure racism, and it shouldn't be too difficult to establish at least a prima facie case of intent. I mean, what social actions are you planning or thinking about doing in conjunction with the legal actions? Boycotts, or, I mean, what kind of social action could be combined with this kind of legal act to kind of continue to put pressure on these obvious racists?
So we held a press conference in the area. As we get more into the entertainment that's coming, we've raised issues around, we've got the FIFA World Cup coming here in June, and we've raised issues in the media about, here we are saying to the World Cup that we're a city that, values equity and inclusion, while we have all of this racism and discrimination happening in one of our most popular entertainment districts. So as we bring people into the area, we're going to raise the, the spotlight, put more sunshine on what's happening in Westport. And we've done periodic updates in terms of the legal actions that we've taken. And we hope to be able to mobilize our young activist groups to show up in the Westport area and bring, some activism and perhaps civil disobedience to these issues going forward.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note that NAACP has still considers Missouri to be, we're on their no travel list as well. And so we're elevating this issue in that context as well.
So the two lawyers asked their question. The political scientist, I'm going to ask a political question. So you've kind of hinted at this. I'm very curious about, you kind of mentioned this is a country club kind of energy. So the demographic in this area, is this a very strong conservative area, a MAGA area? I'm just trying to get the kind of political landscape here.
It's a very affluent area. I wouldn't. I think you probably have a combination of all political affiliations in this area, but it is a very affluent area, and it is part of the historical racial dividing line of Kansas City. We often talk about the city as being like a tale of two cities. Divided east and west of Truce, which is a street that runs through the city. And if you're living west of Truce, that's where you have affluence and, wealth. And on east of Truce, that's where you have poverty and disinvestment in our areas. So it's more of that than I think it's the political climate. The thing about Missouri overall, we're in a crimson red state, very conservative. But in this particular area, you would find, a lot of, maybe I would say it's more of a progressive community. But the merchants, the people who own these businesses, don't want to see, it's very racist in that if we have black people, then they go, we're going to have a whole lot more violence. We're going to have, blight, these things, because we attract a black people to come in here and shop and to eat and to frequent the bars and other establishments.
Cecilia, final comment?
Absolutely. I just would like to continue to thank you for raising this issue. As we find more evidence, we grow more and more confident. So, I know we were asked, what are we asking Black people to do? I'm not asking Black people to do a thing. I want white people to pick up arms and to stop this. And if they won't, that's when we step in.
All right, then. Let me thank both of you for joining us. Keep us abreast of what happens in this case, Cecilia Brown, as well as Glenn Grant. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, going to a break. When we come back, more right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, including talking about the tragic murder-suicide out of Virginia of former Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax and his wife, a dentist, Dr. Serena Fairfax. It is a story that shocks so many of us, and we will get into that right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
MAGA Republicans ended diversity programs, cut funding for Black students, and fired federal employees. And they won't stop there. Now, they've redrawn congressional maps so that they can rig the November elections. But we have the power to stop them. By voting yes for fair elections, we have the final say on who represents us in Congress. This is a temporary measure to restore fairness. They are not backing down, and neither can we. Make a plan to vote by April 21st and vote yes for fair elections.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Deion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
One second. Folks, this morning, I got a phone call regarding some business, and I was going to go back to sleep, and I said, don't check your text messages, because you know it's going to keep you up. Well, I did, and I saw literally 8 to 10 different text messages that had Justin Fairfax in it. And I immediately thought, my goodness, did something happen to him? Was it an accident? What went on? And then when I opened those text messages, I saw the news that it was a murder-suicide, that the former lieutenant governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax, shot and killed his wife, Serena, several times in their home in Northern Virginia. Police are calling it a murder-suicide. Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis said the couple's divorce more than likely triggered this incident.
So far, what we know is probably what you all know, and I don't think it's a secret that there's been divorce proceedings that have been ongoing. From what I understand in this early stage, former Lieutenant Governor Fairfax was recently served some paperwork associated with an upcoming court proceeding. That apparently led to this incident last night. Both of their children, teenagers, the boys older than the girl, were in the house when it happened. So that's horrible news for the family. Certainly a traumatic event for those children to live through. But we know that it all kind of culminated last night when Justin Fairfax shot several times, and killed his wife, ran to a different part of the home, and then killed himself with the same firearm.
Both had been living in the same home, according to media reports. As they were going through this divorce and custody battle, he lost custody of his children and was being ordered to move out of the home by April 30th. A number of people who knew them well have been posting their thoughts and as to what actually took place today. Sophia Nelson, who book author, she posted about how she often talked with Justin Fairfax over the last several years, and she talked about depression, what he was going through and dealing with. And she posted this 7-minute video on social media. Listen.
Hey everybody. I wanted to just hop on and make a short statement because tweeting will never be able to say how I feel. First and foremost, I am heartbroken and devastated for the Fairfax children. I thought the statement put out by DeMatha High School, which is a high school that Justin attended, it's a Catholic high school here in this region, was a good one. That was the Justin we all knew. The guy full of hope and promise and gifts and possibilities for his future. All of that changed in 2019 when Justin was lieutenant governor. The second thing I want to say is Serena Fairfax, anyone who knew her knew she was an amazing woman. Kind, good, a great dentist, faithful to her patients and her community, and faithful and loyal to her husband at the most difficult and dark moment ever for their marriage and for their family when these allegations about Justin came out in 2019 when he was serving as Virginia's lieutenant governor. Serena didn't deserve her ending. Serena did not deserve what Justin did to her. Those of us who talked to Justin as late as Monday or Tuesday of this week or were in often contact with him knew that he was depressed, knew that he was in darkness, knew that he was dealing with everything he had lost, feeling that there was no hope. And all of us tried to encourage him to get help, to get back in the arena, to not give in, and to do something good through all of this, something he called the culture of cruelty. He wasn't able to turn that corner. But none of that justifies murdering his wife while their children slept in the home and leaving his children holding the bag in something that is unthinkable and unimaginable for someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s to handle, much less 2 teenagers who now don't have parents. I would ask those of you on social media to just stop with the ugliness, the vitriol, the name calling, the judgments, because you don't know this family and you don't know what was going on. What you know is the outcome, and it is tragic and horrible and something none of us that knew them ever thought was possible. I think if we're honest, some of us thought Justin could hurt himself because he was so depressed and down. Up until Tuesday of this week, one of the last things Justin said to me was, I need somebody to help me to prove my innocence. I can't get my life back until somebody stands up for me. I had done so in a Washington Post piece in 2022, but I had done all I could do. Others should have stepped up. I think there's a bigger conversation for us to have about this, but not right now. I think we have to talk about men in depression. I think we have to talk about domestic violence. I think we have to talk about men in dealing with their emotions and what happens when they don't. I think there's a lot to talk about, but I don't think now is that time. I think the Fairfax children are what we all need to focus on. And they have two really good families in their mother's family and their father's family who will get them through this and who will love them and care about them. And that's what I care about. I'm angry at Justin. I'm in shock. I'm appalled. I don't know what to say. I keep asking, what more could I have done? How did I not see this coming? We're all asking ourselves that. We're never going to get an answer. But I want to be unequivocal to those of you, again, who are really saying unkind, nasty things about those of us who knew Justin and were his friends and who loved him and cared about him and who were trying to get him on the other side of this. There is no excuse for what he did. It is unconscionable, immoral, wicked, vile. Give me words. But none of that's going to bring Serena back. And none of that's going to bring Justin back. I pray for those kids and I pray for healing for them that's supernatural because they're going to need it. Because this is one of those things that's going to be with them for the rest of their days. They lost two parents in a matter of moments in a horrific way. And I pray that the community cares for them and that all of us will care for them. Lauren Burke, thank you for your faithful service of years as Justin's publicist and as a dear sister and friend. You and I went through a lot together in trying to get this brother back together and get his life together. And I know we've talked and we're both struggling with this. I can't imagine how his family feels. I can't imagine how his fraternity brothers feel. And to Serena's family and to her friends and her community and her employees, my heart hurts for you. She was a wonderful woman. I had the blessing of meeting her. Quiet, gentle, good, a great mom, a good woman. She did not deserve this. There is no excuse. There is no justification. It's just horrible. I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about us all and praying for healing. And I pray that we take something out of this, that we really need to rethink our public discourse and our public life and how we handle politicians and people who run for office or people who are in office. They're people too. And they have wives and they have children, or they have husbands and they have children. We need to think about that. That's all I want to say for now. God bless you and God bless the Fairfax kids.
So I knew both Justin and Serena. I knew Justin more. He'd often been on my show. Justin was an Alpha fraternity brother. He also was a Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. We were in the same chapter, Beta Nu. He obviously came on the TV One show when so remember, he ran for Attorney General in Virginia, lost, got more than 600,000 votes, then ran in 2017 for Lieutenant Governor, shocked folk and won. And I remember national media were not paying any attention to him. And then all of a sudden he won, that everybody wanted him. He came on my show first. He said, you were interviewing me before the rest of them did. And we brought him on. And that was the interview when he came on the show. And he was 48 hours away from becoming governor of Virginia when the blackface scandal regarding Governor Ralph Northam came out. And that's when the sexual assault allegations first dropped, that he had forced a woman to perform oral sex on him. He said it was consensual. And then there was a second allegation that came out of Raleigh, North Carolina, when he was a student at Duke. There were never any criminal charges. There was never any civil lawsuit. There were black female DAs in Boston and Raleigh who said, if a criminal complaint is filed, we will fully investigate it. That never happened. So one of the things that Justin could not let go of, he felt there was never any due process. I can tell you, he came on this show to talk about it. He talked about it personally. I look back at the text messages. We last texted March of last year. His nickname for me was Legend. He would always call me Legend. Serena texted me last year. She recommended me to be the commencement speaker at Norfolk State University. And she was sad and they picked somebody else. And I went back and I'm looking at those text messages. And we last texted, she sent me a story from Chicago Defender in September. I was not aware of the divorce, was not aware of this custody battle. But I do know, as Sophia laid out, the pain, the burden, the anger that he had because he couldn't prove his innocence. He wasn't found guilty. Law firm that he worked with fired him, could not get hired anywhere else. And so even when he leaves, he ran for governor in 2021, came in fourth place in Democratic primary. Here he is, his wife, an accomplished dentist, professional in her own right. Again, you see these two, you're thinking happy couple. But everything that transpired from 2019, it was, as Sophia said, it was as if it got darker and darker and darker and darker. I talked to people today who absolutely tried to help. And when you see these stories, it is beyond selfish. I know he loved his kids. I know she loved their kids. But Justin's action takes the mother of those kids. Those kids also don't have the father. Now you're seeing the New York Post put out some story regarding documents and talking about financial issues and alcoholism, all sorts of different things along those lines. And the reality is his life was not over. He was being talked about. I mean, he was lieutenant governor. The governor could only serve for one term. Folks were already saying he was going to be the nominee. He would have been for the next term. Before, when Glenn Youngkin, that race, many said that should have been Justin Fairfax. People were saying that he could potentially run for president one day. All of that was lost. But the reality is, his family wasn't lost. And so the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with it? And I'm purposely having tonight two black male psychologists. So let me explain to you why. When the Chris Brown, Rihanna domestic violence situation happened, I was at CNN. And every conversation I saw on national television, it was women talking about domestic violence. And I kept saying, okay, if men are committing domestic violence, why are we not having the conversation with men? We just did the story of the sister in Coral Gables, not Coral Gables, I'm sorry, the town in Florida, shot and killed by her husband, brother there. He's been charged with murder. So when I was at CNN, I said, and so I remember I wanted to book Kevin Powell because Kevin Powell had openly written about committing domestic violence and seeking treatment. And it's interesting, the producers didn't want to do that. They didn't even want an all-male panel. And what's crazy is that the producer of the segment is now the president of MS Now, Rebecca Cutler. And what was interesting is that 3 weeks later, Oprah had Kevin Powell on the show. And I was like, well, clearly he was good enough for Oprah, but he wasn't good enough for CNN. But the issue that I had then was that whenever we talk about domestic violence, we aren't dealing with men. We aren't having men talk about dealing with men. Joining us right now, Doctors Aldwin Tart, Kevin Washington. Kevin, of course, with the Black Psychologists Association. And let's be clear, neither one of you treated Justin Fairfax. I don't know if you knew him or his wife. But based upon all that we know, Kevin, I'll start with you, is that here was an individual who could not handle the destruction of his political career, which impacted the personal career, and now brings in the devastation of his family, now leaving not only, my God, his teenage kids. I mean, it was the son was the one who called 911, but also brothers and fathers and her family as well. So this tragedy it goes beyond, killing his wife, taking his life. Now you're going to have lifelong implications as a result.
I mean, when you talk about the dynamics of Black men and mental health and elements that are often untreated, the dynamics of living in a space that denies you the full expression of your maleness, the presumption of incompetence when you walk into a given space, the idea of trying to measure up and trying to find ways to fit in places that don't want you to be there, in the context of a space of coming from communities of disavowed identity, there is a seed, a bed that is fertile for creating a condition of confusion, a condition of lack of groundedness, but more importantly, then one tries to find a way to be grounded in a false position of humanity in places that still don't want you to be there. So it's a lot. I mean, the story is thick. The children there, when this process takes place, the long impacts of it. You mentioned it very clearly of how many people are impacted by this entire process. And here we are in a space where we are still dealing with the issues of Black men suffering in silence. There's no silence at this time. It is time for us to begin to reckon with certain things that we have not been looking into. What does it mean to be who we are? What does it mean to be denied the full expression of your humanity? What does it mean to be questioned when you walk into a space, to modify your language, to soften your voice, to sound a certain way to be acceptable? And who bears the brunt of that? If I cannot express this out in the world to someone as how I'm frustrated, it often may implode within our homes. But that's not to justify the issues of domestic violence. It is simply to say that we have to have the release valve put there. And I will say that research we did with Black men and research around workplace issues, and we said, talk about your most challenging part of the job. They said my most challenging part of the job was going to happy hour with my coworkers, my non-Black coworkers. It said for them, their happy hours when they were driving away from that particular environment. So do we ever talk about the frustrations of being in certain spaces? And then you have people, when you get to your home and you're not getting support or whatever you feel that you should get, right? And that this is not about what should have happened. I'm simply saying that our interpretation of reality, not the issue of what is real. All those things begin to set the condition around which individuals can and oftentimes do implode. That's why we hear psychologists talk about how we relieve ourselves.
Aldwin, when I posted that we were doing this, people immediately said, well, you talk about mental health, you should be talking about domestic violence. And I said, but they actually go together. And I said, if you do not address the mental health issue, then it's going to lead to domestic violence. And again, see, this is the issue that I have when we talk about domestic violence only from a female perspective. If we do not have conversations and confront domestic violence from a male perspective, then we're not getting at the individuals who are largely committing domestic violence. And that person that goes to that extent that commits domestic violence, that is a mental health issue that you have to confront. So it could be ego, it could be narcissism, it could be anger, it could be selfishness, it could be post-traumatic syndrome, it could be any number of things. And those are things that we have to address. And all too often, we're not having those conversations specifically with and about men, especially Black men.
I mean, when we look at the case of Justin Fairfax, I mean, I think any, clinical psychologist is able to see that he had all of the markers for all the risk factors that you don't want to have. All right, so let's make this specific for Justin. All right, so we call this the fallen high status Black man. All right, phenomenon. So think about who he was, a public figure who lost it all publicly. All right, so you had the pending divorce, the pending loss of his children, what that looks like for his political career. Right, we have the alcoholism, the daily alcohol use. We have the buying of the gun. We have the political demise, right, and what we call like a narcissistic injury cascade. So we have the sexual abuse allegations, the political defeat, the IRS. The only reason I'm saying this is that if we're into his world, this is a lot for anyone to handle. And when you're a public figure, it makes it even worse. And when we start talking about Black men, there are times in which we feel like we're supposed to just cowboy up, struggle through it, versus say, hey, you know what? This is too much for me to bear, right? And one of the things that we know about when it comes to just men, especially Black men and mental health, the stronger, if we're talking about mental wellness, mental fitness, is actually to be vulnerable about what's going on. Well, the complicated thing is when you are a political figure, are you a public figure? First of all, who can you trust? There's only 4% of psychologists are Black men. 4%. So who could he go to and trust? 2, did he even want to go? A lot of times men would say, hey, that makes me weak. If someone found out I was seeing a psychologist, would that disqualify me as mentally stable or mentally strong or able to govern? So there were a lot of things that were working against Justin. Right now, I did not know him personally, right? But when we start looking at this persona and we look at it specifically, when we look at suicide rates, believe it or not, suicide rates are higher among political figures, police officers, pastors. Why? Because if you're the helper, if you're the fixer, who do you go to get fixed? And then if we compound this, all right, with actually having a gun and having intimate partner conflict, raises the chances of homicide and suicide by about 500%. All right. So when we start looking at, the policies of these states and really keeping people safe and keeping families safe, the access to a gun without a mental health evaluation, right? Not being able either to access or maybe his reluctance to access care for depression, alcoholism, partner relational conflict. This is how a clinical psychologist would code it. And then work stress, and then conflict with his children as far as whatever the custody is. That's a lot for anyone to deal with. So when we look at this, Black men absolutely have to sit down and talk and be vulnerable and say, this is too much. Why? Because when we express it, we can actually decrease some of the stress that we're under so that we don't get to a point to where suicide, homicide becomes a viable option because someone is depressed. And just a point of clarity, because I know people are going to say this. All domestic violence is not necessarily linked to mental health. There are some people who are just, who don't have any mental health diagnosis when it comes to domestic violence. That is just a mindset that they have, right? But there are also others that in this case, where there's comorbid depression, alcoholism, political devise, public scrutiny, conflict with the courts, right? And then ongoing stress that becomes intolerable.
And Kevin, and this is, again, I guess what really bothers me, I've been looking at a lot of these comments. Monster, evil. But first of all, anyone who chooses to turn on their spouse and kill them, that is beyond deplorable. And then kill yourself in a home with your children. Yet when we start examining all of these things, Aldwin laid it out, this, and you as well, in terms of being this high achiever. I mean, here was someone who ran for attorney general, who was a U.S. attorney, went to Duke, Columbia Law School, body man for Senator John Edwards when he ran for president, who clearly, I mean, I remember it vividly. He wins in 2017, and he's called one of the stars of the Democratic Party. You can only be a governor with one term in Virginia. Oh, he's going to be the nominee in 2021. He's 48 hours away from becoming governor. Allegations then drop. And I can say this because I know of the conversations we had. What drove him crazy, was so angry, is that he couldn't prove his innocence, nor was he found guilty. And so he was sort of stuck in this no man's land. And when he was like, I want the FBI to investigate. I want there to be, I want somebody to, he wanted absolution, never could receive it. Loses the job. Now all of a sudden, you're going through a divorce. Now you're in a custody battle. Now you're ordered to leave the house and you lose custody of the children. Kevin, is that a person who goes, I've lost all of this, now I'm losing the one thing, the two things that I still had, that was a wife and family. And so, and again, I'm not saying put us in that person's mind, but walk people through what that means on an individual to deal with.
So when you have these events that take place in our lives, we have to think clearly about the limbic system, which comprises of the amygdala, the septum, and the hippocampus. And these deal with our issues of rage and emotions and fear and frustrations. And so when these neurochemicals start to move within our system, the regulation of emotions becomes very dysregulated, right? And when you begin to find ways to normalize yourself or to humanize yourself in spaces such as institutions that you attend, Duke, or the occupation that you ascribe to, law, or the law school that you attend to, right, or your position, your status, and those things begin to provide a buffer for you against the other things that can be causing you some psychological disrepair. And all of a sudden, your buffers have removed themselves, and the place where you often found solace, right, the peace, the structure. Most men say the only thing I desire when I return home is peace. And so when that's disrupted, then you have the issue of the deceptive rage, the idea of rage, the idea of the poor judgment. And so these behaviors are endemic in a process around which one feels like they've lost it all. My buffers are gone. And so it is imperative for Black men to find themselves and find their identity, not in the wombs of women, not in bottles on the wall, not in the things that they smoke, but they find their value and worth in the essence of what it means to be who they are. And that's where therapy comes into play. But I want to say this also, it's critical, because there are different forms of domestic violence that often get overlooked. And many times domestic violence that is verbal gets overlooked because there are no wounds. People then suggest that the words are not the things that are important to us. But I assure you that everybody listening has had some word spoken to them that has presented them with some type of emotional, psychological scar that has not been healed. And oftentimes relationships have these particular rubs that take place, unhealed, unresolved scars that were verbal, they were very penetrating. And whereas women may often resort to retorting verbally, men typically take things to the grass, take it outside or whatever it is, right? And this is just a generalization. This is not saying this is for everybody. It's not absolute. So we see the difference in how we resolve issues and challenges. And so you see the actions here. So as you suggested, the fertile ground was set. The reality is, do we know who we are? Can we identify ourselves in alien places? And I submit to you that it's difficult to do so. And as a psychologist, the issue is about normalization. How do you get back to yourself? And as my dear brother said, it's like this: therapy is to the soul or spirit as a cast is to a broken bone. It provides the structure for the healing to take place. But if the medical professional does not have any knowledge of what was the original structure of the bone prior to its breakage, then the cast that will be placed on that broken bone can be ill placed, and therefore you have an ill-formed healing process. If the individuals were not clear about what it meant to be Black and Blackness and what it means to be a Black man and what are some of the things that are disruptive, then the type of therapeutic intervention that is applied can be disruptive. And many times that is one of the reasons why Black men don't find themselves in therapeutic sessions. Not only the issue of safe self-facing stuff, the idea of how do I save my face, but also do I believe you understand what in this hell is going on? Not the issue of hell in the sense of a profanity piece, the issue of as I'm dealing with all of these hellacious issues, these voices, these thoughts, these ideas, these conflictual phenomena, this reality. Do I believe that the person I'm going to sit across from has the capacity to understand and the wherewithal to not only hear, listen, but also understand deeply the essence of what it means to be me, and then to begin to set me on a pathway for the healing to take place?
Panel, get ready for your questions after I ask this question of Aldwin. I was texting somebody earlier who said that this person said they know several men who are going through divorce who are still living in the home. I went through divorce in 1999, tried that for a month, didn't have kids, but I was like, no, I can't stay here. As I was sitting here just thinking about and just, again, I mean, the whole day, just talking to people who knew both of them, but talking to people who were dealing with Justin and trying to help him out. You're almost married 20 years. You're 47 years old. You've got 2 kids. You're in this divorce, this bitter divorce. Now you're in the custody battle, yet you're still in the same place. You're seeing this person every single day. Talk about what that is like every day. And then, of course, we find out that he was ordered out of the home by April 30th and also losing custody of the children and the impact that has on someone who is already in an extremely fragile state.
I mean, well, first of all, Roland, Justin is your friend, all right? And so you have to honor him, you know. On the other end, we have to accept accountability, right? And so this is what I mean, all right? I want to respect. He lost custody of his children, right? That means that a court looked at this and said it's not safe for him to be around his children. He had a handgun, depressed, drinking alcohol, right? And has the means to get therapy. Now, Kevin will tell you, we're not hard to find. All right. And if people were trying to reach out to him, and you know this, Roland.
We're not hard to find. But what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get that brother to understand the scene that's being set and how you need to remove yourself from a situation and be somewhere so you can begin the healing process. And that was a book I read when I was in divorce. It was called "A Divorce is Like a Living Death." And so this is what we have to get men. We need men to be thinking about this, but also brothers around them also helping them to understand that if you're staying in that place, knowing the condition that you're in, it's gonna go one direction, and it's not a good one. So how do we do that?
One, right? So the Bible says, all right, plans fail due to lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. See, what I did was reframe counseling as something that you get as a strength, all right? And when we're a strong man, and you look at is there anyone stronger? We look at a persona of strongness. A lot of times we'll push back with getting help because it's an indication that we're weak, all right? And I see where you're going, Roland.
Because our culture has called it weak. Our culture has said, oh, man, you weak, you ain't weak. Suck it up. That ain't what a man do. What you're saying is like, no, getting help is actually, that's...
Because you don't enter your family. Because a real man has to protect his family. And I'm talking about real men, not saying Justin wasn't, but I'm talking about the male ego, right? We're here to protect emotionally. And so that means that I can bleed out on my family, right? Or I can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go get well. This has been a lot on me. And my wife, my kids don't deserve for me to handle this in a way that's dysfunctional. right? So where I get to a point to where the court has to decide whether I'm fit to be in the home, to where the divorce gets so bitter and we're staying in there and the kids are watching this on a regular basis, right? So the manlier thing to do is to be vulnerable and say, I'm not going to let what's going on in my life, right? And he certainly had a lot of stress, right? Just to say the least. He had multiple compounded stress in the public eye while going through privately, going through hell, right? But also refusing therapy. So every man watching out here that thinks that we can lone wolf, or the strong thing to do is to suck it up, or don't cry. The stronger man says, you always default to the thing that's harder. If I'm talking to men, is it easier to drink and act like everything's okay and be silent, or is it harder to sit down in front of a psychologist or a therapist and say, my life is falling apart? I feel unjustly accused. I'm losing everything. I've publicly fallen in front of someone. I was once deemed to be one of the strongest Black men in the country, and now I can't even keep my family together, my reputation together, right? And I'm losing access to everything that I know. Now, what if he was able to be vulnerable and talk to a mental health therapist, to be able to vent, then to be able to get diagnosed with depression, then being able to get coping skills that don't involve alcohol, right? Then being advised, hey, you buying a gun is the worst thing that you can do if you ever want to have custody of your kids. Right. And it's the absolute wrong thing for you to do to not only keep yourself safe, but your wife safe and your family safe. Right? He could have even been hospitalized. He could have done day treatment. He could have gotten medication, right? Now, I know we think, I don't want to do those things. But think about if he would have addressed his mental health issues, his feelings in a proactive, productive, and healthy way by putting himself in the care, not only of one, because like Kevin would say, he would have had multiple doctors, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a primary care physician, right? He would have had multiple resources that would have helped him to potentially be here without harming himself and family. So men, as you're listening, vulnerability is a strength, because then you can name it. And when you can name it, I'm depressed. And there are men out here, and I want to see the comments. There are men out here that said they're depressed. Right? I used to work for the NBA, and one of the campaigns that they did to get men to shift to depression being manly is to get men that men respect to say, I was depressed. Kevin Love, I was depressed. Paul Pierce, I feel anxious. Right? Marquise Morris, I was depressed. So when we start looking at this as Black men, we're under a lot of pressure, and he was certainly under compound stressors for a long time. I really wish and pray, all right, if there's anything that can be learn from this, from the broader mental health community, is that as men, we have to sit down and talk about our pain so that we can heal and not hurt those we're tasked to protect.
And the reason I was, again, pushing that way, as I was thinking about, I mean, the reality is I know lots of sisters, and I know when sisters get together, conferences and whatever, and I've been very critical of a lot of male conferences where it's quite superficial, it's not deep, not deeper than mustard on a hot dog, where you're not dealing with real, true feelings. And the thing that's also so frustrating to me is that I know the conversations as an alpha that we've had in our brotherhoods, when brothers are actually communicating. And Justin was a part of 2 male organizations, but that brotherhood existed. And so the reason brothers are watching, meaning adult brothers are watching, college brothers are watching, teenage brothers are watching, and I need them to understand that we have a role, because there are things that we need to be watching for and listening when our homeboy is talking, when we're at the basketball court or on the golf course, to understand that that pain that a person is enduring, they may be trying to cover it up, but we also, for lack of a better phrase, need to be first responders in pushing them, bruh, how you doing? And not just, yo, I'm good, and not accepting, I'm good. Let me go to my panel. Scott Bolden, you're first with a question.
Yeah, thank you, Roland. Justin was in our same fraternity, Sigma Pi Phi. He was a political friend. The Justin I knew was a fighter. He came to me professionally for what, Roland, you just said, was to find vindication, his due process. When I say he was a fighter because he wanted to sue the two women in the middle of this Me Too movement because he had lost everything that you all have talked about. We weren't retained. I wasn't retained for that lawsuit. Can't remember whether he ever filed that lawsuit. But he was a fighter, but it was a deeply seated loss for him. You know, men, and there's a question coming, men evaluate themselves all the time on the external. We provide, we profess, we protect with our families. We're judged on money, job success, so forth and so on. But the one part I'd love to hear your comments on from both doctors is, it's for me to get to you and to say, this is going to help me, right? I've got to be convinced as a man that you can help me. When men say, I don't need to go to counseling, I'm not going to counseling, it's because that's not going to get me a job. That's not going to pay my bills. That's not going to get me my family back. That's not going to do anything that I need to fight my way out of this craziness that's put me in a depression. I've got to be sold on that this is going to help me in those 5 areas, because if that doesn't help me in these 5 areas and I'm just talking and you're going to give me some coping mechanisms, that's all well and good. But if I'm a high achiever, right, then I'm looking for solutions, because men are about solving problems. Justin was a lawyer, so he was about, his core was, I got to solve these problems. How to get my political life back, my family life. I got to have a job. I got to pay bills. The bottle ain't helping. The drugs aren't, whatever. That's not helping. So doctor, you two doctors, if you can tell me how that's going to help me solve those 5 problems, then I'm coming to see you. But you can't tell me that, then I'm going to keep struggling and I'm going to keep trying to figure out a way to solve these huge problems I got that I arguably, in my mind, had nothing to do with, other than I had consensual sex with these 2 women and my political career is over, where I don't even think I did anything wrong and I don't have any judgment or due process. How do you get Black men with that as a circumstance or context, right, to say, yes, I'm going to go get counseling? Because you can say everything that you said, but what I'm talking about is convincing them to do that as problem solvers, and how we value everything on the outside of our lives. Society values that, and we've been taught at our core to value that.
I mean, so that is a phenomenal question, and you're asking it like a high achieving dominant male, right? And what I would say is that it happens every day. This is what psychologists do, but because we've never seen it, we don't believe that it works. So there's not a lot of trust. I can tell you who does know this: Black females, because Black females go to therapy at a rate 2 to 3 times as Black men. When they're going through things, they're sitting down and talking about, I got laid off with DEI. You know, I'm going through a divorce. This is tough on my children. And they are utilizing the services. And that's why Black women, all right, have the lowest suicide rates of anyone in the country. All right. And so when we start looking at this as man and say, I'm going to do this on my own. If this is not going to pay the bills, I'm going to do this I'm going to drink. I'm going to, not in the case of Justin, I might retreat to sex. I might retreat to fighting. I might retreat to withdrawing. I might retreat to just being by myself. And what we know about isolation, when you're by yourself and you're not expressing it, all you're doing is getting angrier. All right. And what you're beginning to ruminate. All right. And so he created this idea of what he was going to do beforehand. All right. He had the gun. All right. So when we start looking at this, these thoughts are, and anyone that would tell you about the progression of suicide and homicide, a lot of times people tell you they have thought about it. Right. This is why a lot of states don't allow you to be able to get a gun without a mental health.
In fact, Alwyn, he had said that to several people.
Yeah. So when we look at it, so the benefit here is, and this is where we have to see, right? You have to actually see it, right? So when you sit down and say, you know what, I feel stressed. I don't know what's going to happen in my life. And you are vulnerable, all right? That is a form of self-expression that is actually decreasing your level of stress, right? This is why we vent. So when we start talking about the treatment model, Kevin will tell you, part of it is communicating and expressing so you can express versus suppress. See, when you suppress all these emotions and you act like everything's okay, Roland, you going off at people at work. Kevin's going off at people at work. I'm nasty towards my wife. I'm quick tempered. Right? Why? I'm really stressed. And my emotions, there's a book called The Body Keeps Score. My emotions are keeping score, that everything is crumbling around me. Right? But if I can't express that in a safe space, well, I don't even have to trust a therapist. I can just trust that they tell my business, they can sue. So this is the safest place for a Black man to be, because we can't talk about publicly. Kevin couldn't be on this show if we treated Justin.
Right.
That would be a violation of his HIPAA rights. So you have a safe space to be able to talk about how you feel, and then someone to be able to diagnose you and then help you treat depression. So what we're saying is that doctors don't know how to treat depression? Absolutely we do. We do that every day. And there are men out here to say, yeah, I went and got therapy and I'm no longer depressed because I was able to talk about my pain, reframe it, get treatment. If I need medication to help me to think clearly, to stress, de-stress. And also, here's a precursor. Men who do not sleep that's the number one predictor of suicidal ideation is people who have not slept for a period of 1 month to 3 months consistently, because sleep deprivation drastically changes, all right, your mood and your ability to think clearly. It's so strong. This is how people are tortured. Sleep deprivation is one of the number one tortures to get soldiers to be able to tell. That's how powerful it is. So when we're so stressed we can't sleep, man, if you're watching this and you can't sleep and you haven't slept, for a period of 30 to 45 to 60 days consistently, all right, you are driving yourself to be more depressed and anxious. So the question I'd ask as I wrap up is it better to have these things get worse? Or is it better to sit down and talk to someone about how you're feeling so that, one, you can express yourself, feel supported, have someone strategize with you, not only give you coping mechanisms, but help you treat your depression, right? And possibly give you something so you can sleep, so you can be in your right mind.
Kevin, you going to weigh in?
Dr. Tart just mentioned was about the issue of cortisol levels. They get increased. Adrenaline level, and as a result, then it disrupts the entire sleep cycle, which disrupts our cognition, our judgment, and so forth. I want to say this. I say this also, Dr. Tart, is that we understand that women can be together, and understand that men do together in general. What I mean by that, classic example: women can get up and say, "Let's go to the restroom together." It's not a thing that we would do as a man. Say, "Hey, let's go to the restroom together." It's not a thing. And so Roland was spot on when he suggested this idea of how are we responders around the things that we do together, right? And so one of the things we have to do a better job of as therapists is have a presence in spaces where we are doing together. We will fix a car together. We will play ball together. We will do a lot of things together. And inside of that doing, it oftentimes is a moment of being. But we miss the being moment because then we don't know how, as Roland said, to then pare down what is really going. Man, how you doing? Oh, I'm all right. No, not really. How you doing? Right?
Right.
What's going on with you? And allowing people to go down to the next level. So what are some of our doing moments? One of the things I found out is men engage in cigar smoking. It's not one of my things in totality, but I started developing some intrigue around cigars, right? And so we have a podcast called When the Smoke Clears. And When the Smoke Clears is about men coming together and sharing things like what's happening with me around the context of divorce, context of child separation, and so those kind of things. And one of the things I do is whenever I have a young person that comes into my space, or an older person, doesn't matter who it is, and they'll tell me a narrative around what's going on with them. And they may mention, this is not a professional conversation, this is just us talking. And they'll say, hey, let me tell you what she did or what she said or what happened. And this is the narrative. And I'll stop, I'll start laughing, and I'll call another brother. And I'll say, listen to this. And I'll just hold the phone up, and he'll say what happened. And that person will start laughing. And it's not laughing at what happened. The issue is it normalized the situation so that a person who is, as Dr. Tart says, the idea of high function, high achievement, begins to realize that, you know what, I'm about as normal as everyone else. That we all are having to deal with different dimensions of the same thing. And then we run through the idea of the narrative, like, what night school did certain people go to play the same plays day after day, no matter what generation they find themselves in? So we talk about normalization. So these are the things that we have to figure out. Is it how do we find ourselves in spaces. So it's the being in our activities, the cigar smoking, the where we find ourselves. This is the work. We can't assume that somebody says that I'm going through a hard time, and now I'm going to admit to you to a therapist, to myself, that I need a therapist. That I got to. No, that's probably the last thing I would do. It's the first thing I should do. It's the last thing I do, because it is an admission of a defeat. I can't be a father. I can't be a politician. I can't be a man about the community. I can't be an upstanding person who went to institution and lived life in an upright manner. I can't be a good son. I can't be so many things. And all of a sudden you want to tell me I can't handle my issues? So we have to do a better job of saying, listen, we're here. We have to do a better job of doing this, telling stories, making sure that we know, as all of us have said. Roland, you said, I've been through a divorce. I've been through a divorce. Some of the stuff that I can tell you about that happened, that Jackman, I can tell you that, yes, I thought about suicide. Let me tell you this, and I tell people all the time about the situation. It was so hard for me the first holiday season that I was Thanksgiving, that I was not with my children because of the divorce situation. It was so hurtful because I enjoyed doing things with my children, cooking and moving around and parades or whatever we did. And I sat up in the bed so depressed that I'm a therapist. It don't mean I'm immune from this. And I started texting people that I am thankful for your friendship. I'm thankful for your presence. I'm thankful for whatever it was. I didn't have any intentions. I simply just started to reach out and to say, I'm thankful. And I'm still sad and depressed. And all of a sudden, people start responding back to me in kind. The second thing, and this is what you said, Dr. Tart, very clearly, is that when we roam free in our heads with no adult supervision, that's Dr. John Levine Zant, we cause a lot of problems. So when I began to let it out and I began to just share, it wasn't to a therapist, it's just to friends. Hey, and they started sharing with me, thank you for this. Thank you for that. And I began to recognize my value and worth was more than simply trying to satisfy somebody who wouldn't be satisfied, whether that's on a job, in a family, in a community, wherever it was, that I had value and worth outside of those spaces. At that point, I had the strength to be able to reach out to a mental health professional and start talking and a therapist needs a therapist and begin to talk about these issues. So we have to then, first of all, be in spaces, normalizing, know how to be early responders. Secondarily, have to understand the process around which we allow folks to know that this is normal stuff. You only go on with everybody else, other folks are going through. We figure out how to get through together. And the third thing is to know that when you begin to have acts of altruism, that is, when you begin to have acts where you reach out to people beyond your own circle of pain, your cycle of destruction and despair, and you will begin to find that you begin to help and uplift somebody. And in that process, you cannot help but be uplifted. And I will share with that. Right now, I'm in my mother's kitchen. My mother died February 15th. And so we're here getting some things together. That's part of the reason why we're in a different location. But I wanted to say that one of the things that she always reminded me of is that she says it is difficult to help somebody else without helping yourself in the process. She says always know how to extend beyond your own hurt and pain.
One of the things that and Nola's going to ask the next question before I go to her, when you were talking about that something that we have to recognize is that while we are going through our stuff, sisters are having to deal with us going through our stuff. And so here is Serena having to deal with all of his stuff and still being high functioning at her job as a dentist and still taking care of their children. So again, you going through your stuff, you're not by yourself. Kevin talked about, listen, I went through a divorce. I didn't have kids. So I didn't have that. So when it was over, it was over. I didn't have anything else tying me to that person. When you have kids, you do. And we talk about how we just don't want to confront stuff. I remember I went to it was a men's conference, and I had a work retreat that Friday, and so I didn't get to the retreat until Saturday around 4 p.m. And when I arrived, they said, it was a play date. Guys were out, and they were at, there was a church retreat. They were fishing, playing basketball, doing whatever. And so came back for dinner, and then we had this evening service, and I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting in the back, and then probably about an hour in, I see them bringing in sandwiches and some other stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? They said, oh, we got food and games. I was like, hold up. Y'all played all day. We had dinner. And we in here about an hour and a half. Then we about to play again. And so I stood up and I was like, I said, I know a lot of y'all brothers and some stuff y'all are personally going through. And this probably, my divorce had probably been finalized a month or two. I said, I know y'all going through some stuff. I said, and there are some sisters and some wives and some girlfriends and some mamas and some aunts who sent y'all here hoping to deal with your stuff. And we about to play more games? I never even checked into my hotel room. I just actually went back home. And so one of the criticisms that I have oftentimes is that to the point that, Kevin, when you said being and do, that brothers, when we get together, we are playing games, we are doing activities, but ain't no conversing going on. We ain't going deep. And we had a brotherhood reunion at Texas A&M a number of years ago. And I remember the young brothers said, hey, man, so the AKs are coming by and our girlfriends coming by. And the brothers looked at each other, they were like, hold up, that's not what a brotherhood is. And we said, hold up, turn the music off. First of all, tell them they can't come. And we ended up having a brotherhood. We said, we need to show y'all what a brotherhood is. And a brotherhood is an intense, emotional, spiritual thing. We were there from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it was about dialogue. It was about, trusting in the same space. And so that's what we have to deal with. And so, again, I know there's some people who are upset, who are like, well, they wanted me to focus on some other stuff. They said, well, you can't just be focusing on Justin. I said, but I got to focus on the person who committed the crime. I got to focus on the person who committed the murder. And then in order to deal with, because I'm trying to keep other brothers from doing murder-suicides or beating their wives or girlfriends. And so we need to get to the root of what men are going through so we're not having these conversations. And there's no disrespect to sisters, but the conversations like this cannot be all female-driven. We have to confront what these men are dealing with and what they are unwilling to talk about, share, get therapy, because if it's a continuing problem, then we got to figure out why it's a continuing problem. And I think we fundamentally believe is that we're not having the dialogue. And as I said, we're not being first responders, being attentive to our brothers and our cousins, and when they call us and the sighing on the phone and you can feel the heaviness, and then we just excuse it as, oh, he tired. Nah, it's some other stuff. Nola.
You're right. I mean, it's really quickly,
well, 1 second. I want to go to Nola, and then I still have Greg. Nola, go.
Thank you. This is a heavy conversation.
And also for the audience, we're going to move Morgan to tomorrow in our Shop Black Star Network because I wanted to give this more time to breathe. Nola, go.
So Scott, got to push back because I'd argue that women as chief problem solvers, we seek help because you can't walk around injured. That helps no one. But my question is this. I teach on a college campus, and there is an uptick in accommodations. And I'm listening to this conversation very carefully because all of this impacts all of us, right? It impacts the family, it impacts friends, it impacts everyone. I didn't know Justin, but I met him several times, but I didn't know him, and I'm sitting here in shock. So I can't even imagine the people that were close to him, how they're feeling right now. So we're having this conversation about diagnosing the problem. What are some of the fixes? What are some of the movements to get men interested in therapy, which I know for a fact the last 3 years of my life have been a complete living hell, and without my therapist, I wouldn't be here. So I know how important therapy is, right? So what is the movement here? Because it isn't just impacting the kind of man that Justin was. It is also impacting the young men that are growing up to be the Justins. So how does this become normalized? What is the plan? What is the movement here?
I'm going to say this before Alwyn and Kevin jump in. This is what I'm going to say. And this is what I say to brothers, and I've actually said to sisters. I remember sister telling me, my job is my life. I said, so if your job ends, you just fall out and die? And what I say to a brother, young brother, older. First of all, you are not defined by your job. You are not defined by your paycheck. You are not defined, your life is not defined by what other people say about you. That if you lose all of that, and all of us, when we get to that point where we about to, where this life is over, we ain't thinking about none of that stuff. So if in the end, you ain't thinking about all your stuff, but you thinking about your people, that should be your primary motive. And so it's helpful for us to, as we talk to brothers, to get them to understand all that provider stuff, spiritual covering. A provider is not, that does not always mean financial. A provider also means being there spiritually, emotionally, for your family, for your wife, for your kids. And that's what, for me, what is so painful is that what Justin did, he won't be able to see his kids walk across the stage. He won't be able to hug them when they graduate, when they have their first kid. So if you love your kids so much, the last thing you should ever do first is shoot and kill your wife. And even if you survive, now you're going to prison. And then turn it on yourself. And so I would say, bro, you are not, your being is not defined by all that shit. Because if you lose it, you still here. And your family's still here, and you still got something to live for. Alvin, go ahead.
Yeah, first, just in respect to depression, that's not how depression talks to us, right? Like, so you said that people around him saw a shift. They saw a darkness. They
saw
depression.
It. They heard it. Absolutely.
All right. Treatment, right? So I used to work crisis line in Inglewood, right? So we used to work the suicide hotline crisis. Guess what we do? Get men to talk about what they're going through to de-escalate them, right? So if it doesn't work, if talking doesn't work, why do suicide hotlines exist? So 988, men that are watching, keeping it inside is only going to make it worse. And then it gets to a point of no return. They did a study of people who, I don't want to say it, but failed at committing suicide. Right. And what they found was that, those who survived actually had a moment. Most of them had a moment of regret. They did this study on soldiers, a moment of regret after trying to commit suicide to where they regretted it. Now, why is that relevant? They found that if we can get men to talk, right, that there is a window of depression. There's a window of suicide. There's a window of homicide where homicide police know this, where you can just de-escalate someone and get them below where they are literally not in their right mind. Then they can think more rationally. Right? So that's the first thing. So men thinking that not calling 988 hotline and not talking to someone is not manly, right? It is, because you're able to say, I'm strong enough to talk about what I'm going through so that I don't bleed out on my family and I don't make these mistakes. Second of all, this is the part that's painful, and Dr. Washington knows this, right? I've had to talk to families. So someone like Dr. Washington and I are going to be called in to counsel right now the children for what is publicly going on right now. They're going to send a counselor like us into their school tomorrow to talk to their classmates about what happened with Justin, right? So when we start talking about, and I know this is going to be controversial, when we start thinking about suicide, yeah, Justin has peace, but now his kids, now the medical system, now we have to talk to the kids. There's going to be his anniversary, his birthday, every time this comes up in the news, right? And his wife has to be able to deal with this and talk to the children about this, when we could have just picked up the phone, call 988, right, and talk through this. Now, I am not minimizing Justin's pain, right? And I wish things would be different. The message that I'm trying to send is that when we are vulnerable as men, right, and we're supposed to be the stronger gender, how is it that our queens are calling therapists and talking through their issues? Meanwhile, we're suffering in silence and hurting those we love. So the manlier thing to do, and I'm talking manly, right, on purpose, is to talk about these things. Now, and really quickly, the brother that you need to have on this show, Roland, is Dr. Arthur Evans. All right. He is at the American Psychological Association. He testified in front of Congress and said that the health delivery system for Black men is the problem. This is where Dr. Washington is right. This is where you're right. Right. Men don't access therapy the same way as women. We don't go out to dinner 7 deep and then know all each other's business. We'll go hoop, right? So what it's saying is that we have to change mental health to fit how men act.
Right.
Fishing trips, barbershops, brotherhood circles with the fraternities. But here's the really quick thing. I never ask men how you're doing. And I'm in church too. So guess what we're going to say? Blessed and highly favored. I'm good. I'm Gucci. I'm fine. I'm straight, right? I'm good. You ask men. This is how you open up men. It's called motivational interviewing. For those of you who want to be psychologists. On a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to life satisfaction, that means how happy you are in your life and with your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? Roland, do this every day. Almost every single man is honest. A 3, a 4. See, when you ask that way, men open up. And then you start saying, okay, all right, what makes you a 3? Right? And then how can we get you to an 8? And that is the process of therapy. So what makes me a 3? All this stuff is going on. My kids don't like me. I was rude to them. I feel like my wife is going to leave me. I think my political career is the problem. I have these financial issues. I can't see what I'm going to do next. I feel embarrassed every single time I'm out. I think people are looking at me. I feel like until I vindicate what happened to me, I'll never be able to do what I went to school at the highest level to do. Right? That alone. All right. Now, how can we get you to a 4 or a 5? Right? Well, if I could just stop arguing with my wife, or if I could just get some sleep, or if I could just feel like everyone wasn't watching me. See, psychologists will listen to this. All right. And then our job is to actually present a solution. This is not just this is not just encouragement and giving you a hug. So one, hey, have you talked to your brothers about it? We know you're in fraternity. Get on the phone right now and text 3 brothers and tell them that you're hurting. So now what we're doing is we're building community. We're stopping the lone wolf from being alone in his thoughts. Right? All right. We're looking at medication. Hey, a lot of people take medication, right? Because you're so depressed right now. And we're also going to take this gun from you. We're going to confiscate the gun, right? So you don't have access to it. And we're going to have people stay with you. This is Dr. Washington's going to tell you, this is what we do all the time. We're going to have mama come. We're going to have cousins come, your frat come, and they're going to say, brother, while you're in this, we're going to make sure that you're not alone until we can get you into the right kind of care you need to walk you through this. So just in summary, we can't just do one-on-one therapy. That's not going to work. First of all, it's not enough of us. And 2, men don't really not a lot of men are going to be okay with that. But if you get men in these circles and we build a community where men come together and say, how you doing? And this happens in churches all the time. This is now the new men's ministry, right? And you ask me how we're doing. A lot of men be like, bro, I'm going through it. And then guess what men do? Men do not judge, right? And men say, hey, I've been there. What do you need? But we have to create these circles and make this manly and make this the new norm, so that men can feel like when they come, they can feel seen and heard, and they can model. So if that brother is able to open about what's going on, that's modeling to me, because I probably have never seen that in my life. A man I respect be able to open and say this hurts. We've talked about 2 men talking about divorce, and I've been hurt before. I've been hurt to my core, right? Relationship stress is one of our top stressors. Right. But if I can be around 3 brothers that's talking about how relationships hurt, that's giving me permission to talk about my feelings without feeling that I am weak or something's wrong with me. I can actually repair and be human. I'm a human being. I have feelings, even though I'm male.
Yeah, that's that normalizing piece, right? So you begin to, it gets normalized and you realize that you're not alone. We also do the work. I love what you said, Dr. Tart, about the barbershop. We did work in DC. We keep doing this work around helping barbers see themselves as early responders to mental health challenges. And so we train them in mental health literacy. The sister asked about what are the movements. So there are many barbershop movements that exist to facilitate the process of not just discussing mental health issues, but the barber can say, hey, I noticed this in your child. I noticed this, whisper to somebody, talk to somebody, put them aside. And then even having the discussion inside the barbershop. So we have the barbershop discussions. That's what's called elevating the crown. So we talk about issues like this. Again, we're taking mental health treatment and elevate it into the space where it's where we actually come together and commune. Because again, women will be together, men do together. But in the doing process, a man will let out something about themselves. And our motivation interviewing examples are powerful. But the way we ask certain questions is critical. Not just simply how you doing, but what today makes your life great. What could have made your life better today, right? So it's a simple process of getting people to be able to share something about what's going on with them. We also have a thing called Black Men Travel, bringing young folks and older people together to talk about the issue of traveling and movement. And because we understand that as you begin to engage and see yourself as a citizen of the world, it begins to normalize your behavior, begins to actually have you to think about something other than simply your problems that you're existing in. And in these Black Men Travel groups, the conversations has come up about, man, the reason why I can't travel right now is because I'm in arrears because of child support. But I want to be this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to support y'all on this. We're able to talk then about what does that mean for them. Others talk about what it meant for them to go through that process. And so we have these movements, the barbershop, the Black Men Travel, the cigar pieces. We're finding ways to be in community so that we're doing together. And so in our fraternities, you know, as I'm part of Make Us Phi, a brother on my mind. I mean, it's one of those things about asking the fundamental questions. And I asked the question, really, do we allow ourselves to share? This is what's going on. And one brother in my chapter in Atlanta sent out, brothers, I'm not doing well today.
Right.
Pray for me. Boom. At that point, we stop it, right? Okay. So now you get in responses. But not only that, we start checking in because now it's like, man, well, how you doing?
Right.
You all right? Right. And then it becomes, we now realize that we just can't talk about bruh. You know, now it's like, no, there's some stuff happening.
Let me,
we have to give ourselves permission
I'm gonna read
to be and feel in our fraternities well.
I'm gonna read this before I go to Dr. Carr. And again, this is why I need people to understand why we're having a conversation. So a sister writes on my Instagram in response to my post about this murder-suicide. Respectfully, this is not it. Nor is this the time to address this from a male perspective. This was domestic violence. There have been more than 4 women over the past 2 weeks who lost their lives at the hands of their husbands. The conversation should center safety, protection, and resources from abusive men. My response was simple. Yes, it is time. Because there's a brother out there who may be going through something similar. If I can reach him now, then we've succeeded. See, right there, when we start saying this ain't the time, it is. Because there could be somebody right now who's watching or listening who is thinking what Justin was. Or there could be a brother who has a friend or a cousin or someone who goes, whoa, hold up. I ain't never, y'all, I'm reading the comments. People are saying, my God, that first responder thing, I never thought about that. People are literally responding saying, man, I can do this stuff right now. That's why you can't wait to have a conversation. You could be literally saving somebody's life right now. And so we got to stop this. Well, this ain't the time. This ain't the time. This ain't the time. It actually is. I know he's been waiting long.
This is why we have to say this as men, because this is something that women cannot understand. And there's no disrespect, right? They don't understand what it's like to be a man, right? We tested this, really. They tested AI and if men would talk to chats. Guess what the science showed? They showed that men not only preferred talking to AI chat, but men talked about all types of things to chat, about having issues with their sexual orientation, not wanting to be here, suicidal ideation, inferiority, right? Not measuring up. And here's why. Because they didn't have to face the stigma of what they thought another person would think of us. So when I had this robot that was giving me these resources and talking to me, they found that men, especially at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, were getting on this chat and it was filled with men that were opening up. So what does that mean?
Because there was no judgment.
Yes. So that means that we have to treat men as if we have an ego, right? Which is different from women. You're talking to men, you're talking to ego, all right? So that means that how do men open up? And if you put men in groups and you put men in community, there's a Bible verse that says, therefore confess your sins or your troubles one to another so that you can be healed, because the prayers of the righteous avails much. So when a brother reaches out and say, hey, I'm not good, all right? And we now make it routine as part of church, as part of barbershops, as part of the community, not only being in a fraternity, but just in general, we're just having a male check-in.
Right.
We're just checking in on guys, not only about, and we make it performance-based, not come if you have a problem, but this is about mental strength training. This is brothers holding the fence. You know, we can market. We know how to market to men, right? But in this marketing, we sit down and say how you're doing, and then men can support one another and get each other's cell phone numbers and check on one another. We don't do that. But now that we come and say, brother, I'm going to check on you because I know what it feels like to be with you. I'm going to come by and I'm going to check on you and I'm going to take you to breakfast 5 days this week until you feel better.
Right.
All right. I'm going to go to the doctor with you. You don't want to go. I'm going to go with you. Right. Or you don't want to, you need to exercise to get your mind. I'm going to go to the gym with you. Brother, I'm going to come. Or come stay with me. If it's getting hot at the crib, come stay with me because I'm going to walk you through this, brother. But I can't do that if you don't say that you're vulnerable, and then the community and the tribe is going to come in. And that's what we have to set up, is a radical shift in not only how we serve Black men, but men in general, to make sure that men have opportunities to open up and get help in a way that fits men.
Dr. Greg Carr, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, brothers. Brother Washington, Brother Kevin, we celebrate the ascension of your mother. She joins mine and so many of ours in ancestral repose. You know, I knew Justin, and like you, Roland, going back through the texts over the years, you know, the one thing that just kept coming up was this question of fairness, this question of being, you know, as Scott said, you know, struggling with that and saying ultimately it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. But my question is really about community. I'm not particularly interested in men or women in a gendered space. And Brother Tarek, God bless you, brother. I really not interested in men other than men of African descent in this moment of crisis. Reading the conversations that people are having in social media, Black women, Black men, is breaking my heart. I got out of class this morning and got the news and just thinking about what it must feel like, you know, thinking about Dr. Fairfax, Dr. Selena, and this commitment to rise, to build together, to achieve, and then to have to anchor and be an anchor in a perpetual gale force storm, what she experienced. And then with Justin, thinking about him, it's almost nihilism. It's almost a form of release and surrender. It seems like that's what I felt. So I guess my question is, and I think about you, Kevin, a lot, brother, because as an African-centered psychologist, what is the role of community? Can we heal? And by that, I mean in a psychopathic world where we gender the world in Western norms and Western concepts, and to be a man means to be basically a Donald Trump or a Pete Hegseth or a Brad Pitt or a Black version of that. And so when we talk about healing ourselves, we gender it the way they do. And what I'm not hearing enough of, it seems to be at this moment, is the question of community. Maybe it has something to do with class, social class, economic class, because many times the higher we go up in social and economic class, the more we mirror the problems of people who come from cultures which are clearly not built to do anything other than result in the violences that we see. My question for both of you, and maybe Kevin, first, thinking about Justin Fairfax, I didn't know Justin very well, but I think I knew him well enough to recognize in him a man who, and none of us know, so we can't say nothing about what we know, but a man with a family who is searching for a way to find a path to fairness in an unfair world, who seems to have just abandoned the thought and surrendered. And in this moment, 2 people are dead and 1 person is responsible. And I'm looking for answers and solutions to the rest of us that can help us as these children have to go through this moment, that are centered on community. Black men helping Black women helping Black men, Black communities surrounding us in a way that we can disentangle some of this pathology that we have inherited.
Dr. Carr, thank you for acknowledging so much, right? Thank you for acknowledging the work, and you've been a part of that process over the years as we conceptualize ways of African beingness in an anti-African space. The title of my upcoming book is called Get Up, Stand Up, Elevating the Warrior Spirit in Black Men. And it speaks to this idea of Ubuntu, because that's the title of the first one, is about Ubuntu in psychotherapy. The idea of what does it mean to be, you be you, a Zulu phrase, what you be you, Ubuntu means being into you, unifying life force. And it says that whatever we do is always tied to others. When we do exist in a space of Europeanness, we find ourselves estranging ourselves from what it means to be human. And so we become unlike ourselves. But people always reminded us, don't let your name beat you back home. Whatever you do is going to impact everybody back here. And Ubuntu says that whatever has happened, your humanity is tied to my humanity, that we can only be human together. We have to, as you suggested, have this notion of extended community, even at this time, around the children that to deal with the uncertainties of life, around relationships within the Black community, to understand that we only exist because we exist. And some want to liken the Ubuntu to John Mbiti's phrase of "I am because we are, therefore I am." But Ubuntu is even bigger than John Mbiti's phrase, because it says that I only have an existence because it is we. The Zulu phrase Umuntu, Ungamuntu, Ugabantu, which says a person is a person because they're other people. And if you don't understand what that just meant, understand the impact of one person engaged in the process of suicide, homicide, and how that impacts many persons. And so if it can impact many persons in the context of something that is disruptive, what is the role and responsibility of doing it just the exact opposite? That the healing of one person can be communicative, exchange to others, but are we recognizing it even as a communal process? And so Ubuntu says that, listen, I'm only human because of us. And that's what I was saying earlier about acts of altruism. When we reach out to other people and find our community, reach out to others, we're now having a healing moment. When we talk about, again, the circles, if we're smoking, if we have these various circles, that's the circle of healing, allowing ourselves to have the conversations inside of that restores our humanity, because we're in a space that perpetually taxes and stresses and pushes against what it means to be human. As I said very earlier on, we're in an anti-African space, anti-Black male space. And so it's always a pushback, but we often have this idea of what some will call the imposter syndrome, and not in the context of the imposter syndrome as they suggested, imposter meaning that I don't believe I'm worthy. We oftentimes reimagine ourselves as being like somebody else, assuming somehow we're going to be respected and seen as human, and we will never be seen as human, and therefore we never receive fairness there. Our true worth and value comes in what my grandmother says: be who you is and not who you ain't, because you try to be who you ain't gonna be nobody. So our psychology then is predicated on the notion that you have value and worth in the context of others, in community. And so that's why I said, when you're going through a moment and you can begin to reach out and extend yourself to others. And I say that it is okay to do so. And that's why I say that when somebody comes in my space and shares with me something that is happening, I get somebody else on the phone and call in the middle of the day, and they will share and laugh about it. And then they will exchange. We're extending the issue of pain. What happens is that when there is a sore or rupture that to the body, and one reason why we rub that particular space that's been bruised is because we send the sensation of that particular pain to the area around that pain that we're rubbing, and therefore the pain receptors become decentralized and they spread out. The same then it is for the healing of the spirit and our soul, is that as we begin to come together as in community, we begin to absorb some of the abrasion, we absorb some of that disruption, and then we begin to share in that, but then also begin to send energy back into the space and create the healing. And my last statement is this, is that anytime there was a problem within the community, folks will say, like, what's up with what's up with Tart? Well, Tart out there on that stuff again. Well, tell your mama I'm gonna bring her some greens by. What do the greens have to do with Tart being out there on that stuff again? What it has to do with is that as the person is preparing those greens, there's an incantation over those greens. What am I saying? Community is beginning to get involved in the process. If people know what's happening, we just can't always keep things to ourselves. And then the greens come to the house. And so they bring the greens to the house, and then they say, come on inside. I'll put them on the stove and let's talk. Well, I heard that Tart out there again. Is he all right? Well, pray for us. There'll be a prayer circle. You may even engage in the process of eating those greens together. But the point is that there was a communal recognition of what was happening. It was a rehumanization of the issue that's going on, that you're not going through this thing together. And then there was this particular reach beyond what we deem to be physical to be able to create the healing network. We have to do a better job. I find ourselves in our fraternities. I find ourselves in our churches. I find ourselves in our various institutions. We're being pseudo human beings. We're trying to become like the oppressor rather than be who we are. And that is to be people who really check in with how you doing, how you feeling, how you living, how's your life, and then waiting for the response, not the European finding you, but the issue is, how are you for real? Because among our African people, you don't ask the question how you doing and don't wait for and don't expect a response.
Right.
That's why the Yoruba say, "Shea Lafia Ni." How's everything in the universe? Among the Zulu, Sawubona, how do you have a presence? Right? So when we hear those words, the words are asking the fundamental question, how is your connectivity? Our work has to go down to, as therapists, as healers, to be able to help the community express themselves as early responders, as Roland said, to be able to ask deeper questions, listen, and then respond as community of healers, not as psychologists, but as healers to empower one another.
Alwyn, final comment.
Yeah, we know how to do this. All right, I'm a big doer. Right, so this has already been laid out by the CEO, who happens to be a brother, Dr. Arthur Evans. Right, and so I would get in contact with him about how to change the mental health delivery system, like Dr. Carr said, to be more community oriented. And I can tell you the number one place that is shifting, and I am a psychologist and a licensed and ordained minister, is in the church. It is now the number one mental health delivery system to men. And I'm talking about the Black church. I'm a member of Word of Faith Family Cathedral, Bishop Dale C. Bronner here in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And we have a men's ministry. And this is not just here, all right? If you start looking at the mega churches, all right, the number one growth market is actually men coming into church. Why? Because pastors have started delivering mental health services in a different way. They start talking fishing trips, men's ministry where we play, but it becomes deeper, right? So one, the churches play a huge impact, surprise, surprise, in actually helping men to form community and then meet men where they are. Barbershops are another one. Gyms are actually changing. We're going to get together, and we're not just going to come work out together and see each other, but we're going to sit down and ask how one another's doing and build community, because like Dr. Washington, Dr. Carr said, we are communal. So we can't act like we're Eurocentric and we're individualistic. We're going to do this in college. College universities that are having mental health crisis, they are actually creating communities where they're getting men to check on men. And this is part of the culture. This is what you do on an ongoing basis. So when we change our mental health system to be more Afrocentric and to meet men where they are, using the churches, using the barbershop, using the fraternities, using 100 Black Men, using these organizations where people already are, using the basketball, and we start treating each other in community, all right, because we're never going to have enough psychologists, especially Black men, then we can start making a major dent, all right? And the research is already there. Now we just have to get policy to be able to shift and churches to get the funding to be able to implement this in a way in which men can receive it.
I'm going to close this out with this. And I really need people to pay attention and to rewatch this, because I think a lot of people were hearing, but they were not listening. Someone in the chat said, I'm not going to call this person's name out. Normally, I put people on blast. I'm not going to do that. Person said, I'm hearing a lot of needing help, but not enough of holding men responsible. I need the person to understand that the entire point of the conversation is actually male responsibility. The whole point of the dialogue, when Greg talked about community, when we were talking about first responders, we're talking about resources, we're talking about all these things. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to hold men responsible for self, then for their relationship with their loved one, spouse, then their relationship with their family, and then now the extended family. And so I see so many people who want us to focus on domestic violence, which I totally understand. But I need to first understand, why is that man so angry? Why does that man respond? He's triggered and he start yelling and cussing and now verbally abusing the woman in his life. I need to understand why he's doing that. I can't say, bruh, why you keep cussing your woman out? If I don't understand why, if I don't know what his daddy did or what his daddy didn't do or what his uncle did, or the men in life, if I don't know any of those things, if I don't know if that brother was abused, if that brother was sexually abused, if that brother was physically abused, I don't know any of those things. And so I need folk to understand that we are in this crisis. I had a sister hit me earlier, former TV anchor, very good friend of mine. She hit me and she said to me, give me 1 second. She sent me this text, and several other sisters sent me text saying that we're dealing with a crisis with this domestic violence. What can we do? And I'm like, y'all, if we do not confront with what is happening to the men in our community, the men in our families, the men in our lives, the grown men, if we don't see what is happening, and Nola talked about this, being on college campuses, what is happening among these young brothers, if you're not seeing the anger, the trigger in an 8 or 9 year old, well, then you're not going to understand when they're 18, 20, 25.
That's true.
So I need our folk to understand. And also, folk, let me be clear. The discussion we having, MSNBC, Now not having, Fox News not having, CNN, ABC, NBC not having, they ain't giving this much time. What we have to understand is we have to be willing to begin to empower and train our people. If you were listening to this conversation, Alwyn and Kevin, we're giving you real life things that you can do right now to spot and see. When they said, text a brother, say, hey man, how you text them, check it with somebody. Ricky Smiley called me a week or two ago. Hey man, I don't know what may happen to me. I just want to tell you I love you. He said, I ain't got no other reason to call you. So that's right. I need folk to understand that men are literally yelling and screaming, I need help, but you can't hear it because they don't yell and scream the same way women do. Yeah. And so I need sisters to understand, and again, let me be clear. Serena did not deserve to be killed 7 bullets to her body. The pain and agony she went through. That was an amazing, beautiful sister. Now go back to the other photo. That was an amazing, beautiful sister. She did not deserve that. Her children, her son was the one who found her body in the basement and called 911. Her son now has to live with that. The actions of his daddy against his mama, he now has to carry that the rest of his life. He has to visually carry seeing his mama's body bloodied, dead, and then go to the other part of the house and discover his daddy. So the actions of the man had a cascading impact. The actions of the man impacted his wife, impacts his son, impacts his daughter, impacts his brother, impacts his father, impacts his family, impacts her family, impacts the school children of his son and daughter, impacts their family and friends, impacts whether people go to his funeral or her funeral or both of their funerals, impacts the neighbors. So the action, that single action of one individual has had a cascading impact. So why in the world would we not want to deal with all the stuff before it gets to that point?
Roland, here's where they're coming from. It's really quickly, all right? One of the pillars of domestic violence treatment is accountability. I know where they're coming from, and I also know where you're coming from, right? So what they're talking about, so think about what literally happened. So I'm in pain. Because I'm in pain, I'm going to cause you pain, right? She didn't cause him, to take her life, all right? So what they're saying is that there is an issue of where men have to be accountable for not blaming women for domestic violence. That's what they're talking about. And there's a point in which is men that have to say, you know what, I'm responsible for going to get treatment, right? If I would have gone to get treatment and everyone that came to me that said you need to get help, if I wouldn't have been so proud and say, no, I'm not going to do it, we would never be here. And I have to be accountable. So I think that the message in combining this is, as we're watching this as men, we have an obligation to be able to own our stuff and to be able to say, I need some help. And I don't have, I can't be the man I want to be if my stress is stressing my family. And on the other hand, what you're saying is that men are human beings and we know how to talk to men. If you start condemning men before you know the backstory, before you know what's going on with this brother, and Jesus taught in parables, he got to have a relationship. All right. So if we combine those two, yes, men need to be accountable. Right. But you have to have a relationship with men to be able to hold them accountable. Otherwise, you'll push them even further away.
Right. And what I'm saying is, and I need people to understand, is that I don't want to see a single man commit domestic violence. I don't want to see a woman commit domestic violence. I don't want to see anybody putting hands on somebody or shooting somebody. But if I don't want to see that, then I've got to deal with all of the things that lead up to that. I just need people to understand, a person doesn't just go, okay, I'm gonna grab this gun and I'm gonna sit here and kill this person. No, there was a whole runway of things leading up to that. And what I am saying to people, I need us to recognize as a community, as individuals, as family members, that there's a lot of stuff that leads up to that. And so if we don't confront that stuff, then we're gonna be dealing with this stuff. And if we do confront that, and there are men who have gone through the counseling, who have discovered their pain dating back to their childhood or whatever, who were physically abusive and who no longer are. So people say, oh, the person can never be healed. That's not true. There are examples of that. But what I'm arguing is, if we do not confront the real pain, agony that exists, and whatever the case, what is happening with a lot of these men who have experienced trauma and who are now taking it out on women and their kids and their family, their dog or whatever else, if we don't confront that, we're going to be right back here doing this story for another couple and another couple and another couple. And so having the conversation means to what you just said, Alwyn, earlier. Somebody could be watching this rebroadcast at midnight and at 1 a.m. And he could be one of those brothers, or he might be the brother of one of those brothers, or the cousin of one of those brothers. And because we had the conversation, that person may say, damn, you know what? I'm seeing it in my boy. I need to send them a text right now. That's why you have to have the conversation. Kevin Washington.
Roland, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having this conversation.
Dr. Kevin Washington, Dr. Alwyn Tart, I certainly appreciate both of you. Let me thank Nola for being with us. Let me thank Greg for being with us. Let me thank Scott for being with us. There were a lot of stuff that we were going to get to, but again, I could run that stuff tomorrow. So Morgan, sorry about pushing you. My Shop Black Star Network guest, sorry about pushing you, but I wanted to give this the appropriate space and time needed because, again, there's a lot of people hurting. And again, I was shocked and stunned, and I had this urgent alert call. This is from a Boule gathering. This is Justin and Serena. This is the photo, and I went back, and this is when he won the primary. It was on my TD1 show. This is us at the party there. Amazing smiles. But today there's no smiling. Today there's pain. Today there's sickness, there's anger, there's tragedy. What those kids are now having to deal with is unfathomable. What the family, her family, his family, have to deal with is unfathomable. But our desire is to make sure that we're not at this place with somebody else. And that's what our goal is. Let me close out with Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble.
The NAACP filed a lawsuit against Elon Musk's XAI this week, alleging that the company is illegally operating methane-powered turbines that emit dangerous air pollution at a massive data center complex near Memphis, Tennessee. The complaint filed in federal court in North Mississippi alleges that XAI and its subsidiary, MZX Tech, are violating the Clean Air Act by operating 27 unpermitted gas turbines like those shown here at the Colossus 2 project, which powers the chatbot Broke. According to the civil rights group, the turbines effectively function as a power plant, which is legally required to obtain permits for major sources of air pollution. In a statement, Bree Connor, NAACP's Director of Environmental and Climate Justice, released a statement saying a data center should not be a potential death sentence for a community's health by looking to evade clear air laws to operate city turbines that emit population and known carcinogens. These companies are following a shameful, familiar pattern, asking Black and frontline communities to bear the toxic brunt of innovation. The Colossus 2 turbines are located in South Haven, Mississippi. That's about 13 miles from Memphis. Many neighborhoods near the turbines have majority Black populations. The complex, which is situated close to homes and churches, has the potential to emit more than 1,700 tons of smog-forming nitrogen oxides annually. And it's all according to a lawsuit. Now, if this occurs, it would make Colossus 2 the target of an industrial source of nitrogen oxides in the Memphis area, which currently fails to meet national smog standards. Well, John Eastman, the attorney who assisted Donald Trump in attempting to overturn the 2020 election, has been officially disbarred in California. According to a ruling from the state Supreme Court, Eastman is no longer allowed to practice law due to his significant involvement in efforts to challenge the election results. Well, Eastman is not the only lawyer facing serious repercussions related to these attempts. Others, such as Kenneth Chesebro, Jenna Ellis, and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, have also faced disciplinary actions for their role in the same manner. Well, a restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, has canceled a meet and greet scheduled for Friday with GOP governor candidate Casey Buttigieg after it was revealed that he previously made comments sympathetic to Hitler and the Nazis. Well, he is one of three candidates vying for the GOP nomination of governor of Ohio, with Vivek Ramaswamy expected to win this primary. He gained attention this week after posting video where he asked an AI chatbot to list the positive contributions that Hitler made to Germany. He later criticized the chatbot for mentioning the Holocaust atrocities before providing its next response. The owner of a French bakery and bistro stated that while they often host events for candidates from across the political spectrum, well, they say his remarks about Hitler crossed the line. Well, the city of Akron will pay $24,000 to a Black man who was punched in the face multiple times by police during a June 2024 traffic stop. Police had pulled over a car being driven by Terrell Battles' brother for an expired registration, and body camera footage shows Battles, who was in the passenger seat, arguing with the officer for over a minute while the officer requested that he step out of the car. Now, the video then captures the moment when Battles was pulled from the car and onto the ground, during which the officer punched him in the head. The city's independent police auditor has made several recommendations following this incident, including disciplinary action for the officer and enhanced de-escalation training for the department. The police chief, the mayor, and the city council, they will determine the next steps. Well, a shocking incident occurred in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, where a woman is facing felony charges after allegedly attempting to run over a mail carrier. According to police reports, a Black postal worker was walking for her route when a child approached her to collect her mail for their home. At that moment, 34-year-old Lourdes Maria Portuguese reportedly yelled at the child, saying, "Don't talk to her," and used a racial slur to refer to the mail carrier. Following this, police say that she picked up a hose and sprayed the postal worker. She then got into her SUV and tried to run over the mail carrier. Now, later, the woman is accused of threatening to shoot the postal worker and authorities found a pellet gun inside her home during the investigation. As a result, she is now facing 2 felony charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon with racial prejudice. She's now in jail. Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., one of the oldest and most esteemed colleges in the United States, has issued an apology for its historical involvement in slavery. The university has decided to rename a prominent campus building in honor of one of the slaves they once sold. In 1838, Georgetown and its affiliated church were involved in the sale of more than 270 enslaved people. Recently, during a ceremony attended by more than 100 descendants of those individuals, the university officially named the building Isaac Hawkins Hall. That's in memory of the first enslaved person listed in the 1838 sale document. Georgetown President John DeGloria described slavery as the original evil of our republic and offered a heartfelt apology. He also pledged to continue the university's efforts to confront its historical role in slavery.
All right, folks, be sure to watch The Breakdown of Brittany Noble every day at noon Eastern right here on the Black Star Network. Again, The Breakdown of Brittany Noble, noon Eastern on the Black Star Network. Folks, that is it for us. If you want to support the work that we do, the conversations that we have aren't happening other places, not even in Black-owned media. And so your support is really critical for our continued success. Our goal is to get 20,000 people on average contributing $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That supports this show and the 5 other shows on the Black Star Network. And listen, our costs are real. Expenses are real. And so your support is absolutely vital. We don't charge for subscriptions. We want to keep our content as available, widely available to as many people as possible. And so if you could please contribute, if you have not done so, please do so. Join the 38,000 other people who have done so. If you want to do so via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here on the screen. Click the Cash App button to contribute. You can also use it for credit cards as well. Checks in money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037 7-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo, RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app. iPhone, Android phone, Android TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Samsung Smart TV. So please go to all of those. And if you also want to get our swag, do me a favor. Go to shop blackstarnetwork.com. Listen, a lot of y'all, and I appreciate seeing y'all. We have our remote shows with your sweatshirts and your t-shirts on. And so please support us by going to shop blackstarnetwork.com. We got our t-shirts, our hoodies, our wall art, mugs, and more. All that stuff is available at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Also, we have Black-owned companies that are on there. You can support the various products that we have there by going to go to our marketplace segment to support products. You name it, we got skincare companies. We got all sorts of companies that are on shopblackstarnetwork.com. We're supposed to have a segment today, but we're going to push that to another day because of the conversation that we had. So please go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, that is it. I will see y'all tomorrow right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!